Welcome, welcome. My name is Laura Monique, and in this training, I am going to share with you some of the systems and structures that I use to run my group coaching program. So whether or not you have a group coaching program, maybe you have a one-on-one practice and you would like to create a group coaching program, or maybe you already have one, but you'd like to streamline it a little bit more, add some systems and structures to the back end so that you can scale it. This is going to be a great training for you because I am going to share not only a checklist of some of the systems that you can have on the back end to run your program more smoothly, but I'm also going to share some ideas and questions to kind of get you thinking, because it's about creating a system that works for you and your business and your clients, and not necessarily one that works for me. So I'm going to ask you some guiding questions that you can reflect on. There is a workbook that corresponds to this training that you can use and follow along with. And I will link it up below and link it in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast version of this episode or of this training, so that you can follow along with it as you're listening, or you can just listen and kind of take some notes as you go. It's up to you, but that workbook is available for you. So with this systems checklist for group programs, it's going to give you a great first start. It's going to give you an idea of what you need to implement. If you would like help with the actual implementation and making it work for your business, and if it feels a bit daunting to set all of this up and you would like some support on that, you can always send me a DM at I am Lauren Monique, and I would be happy to chat through with you and support you on that, because that is one of the things I love to do, is setting up systems and businesses. So I remember for me, and before I get into it, I wanted to share that I'm keeping this simple, and this is for a cohort. So a start and end program. It's not for an evergreen enrolling program. So that's totally possible if that's what you want to create. There are a few more systems that are required if you're going to have open enrollment. This is for an open and closing kind of program. So that's the first caveat that I wanted to share. And the other is that this is to help you kind of get started. So know that you can start small and add as you go. You don't have to start with all of these. And I did not start with all of these systems for the beginning. I kind of continued to add on and created building blocks, but it's so you can get an idea of where you might want to go as you build your program, because I run my group coaching program and I've been including it and improving it, for the last year and a half. So this is something that you will build over time. So with that, I wanted to share at first, I remember when I first started my group coaching program a year and a half ago, my main offer in my business is I help teachers stop working evenings and weekends. So I help them streamline their classrooms so they can work less, so they work more efficiently, so they can let go of extras that they might not be doing. So really they can streamline their teaching practice and their teaching the way they teach in the classroom. And so it's similar to what I do with entrepreneurs. I help you teach in a group setting and streamline a lot of the systems in the back end, which some of them are similar to a classroom and some of them are quite different for businesses. So I remember when I started, I felt super, super nervous. I truly wanted to start my program for about 3 years, to be perfectly honest, before I even started it. I remember feeling really worried that I didn't have enough to offer, or I wouldn't know where people are at. That was my big fear, is that I would teach things that were obvious, or that they were too far ahead even. And I was worried about, how would I know where people are at? How would I have a group of people that were all at the same place that I could teach the same thing to? How would I create the curriculum for that? And I remember feeling a lot of nervousness over someone paying me in a group format and not knowing how I was going to actually create it. So I remember feeling all of those feelings, and I started to really normalize by visualizing what it would look like to have a group program. And that, along with the support of my own coach, really helped me get over that hump, because like I said, I did not start it for 3 years. And I started with just a simple Facebook group and a Stripe link to get my group program off the ground. So again, it does not have to be complicated when you start, but listen into some of these ideas that I'm going to share with you today. And you can think about what are the ones that you want to start with and what are the ones you might want to add as you go along, depending upon where you are in your journey of your group program. So the other thing that I wanted to share too is having a way to know how things are going with your people is super important. And I'm going to share that in our steps, because even though I was super nervous, a lot of my clients that I had 7 people join my first program, have written me a year later and said their systems are still working. They're finishing their report cards a few days early. They've stopped working weekends, but it really felt like a risk that first time. So I want to help you alleviate that risk and know where your people are at, so you don't have as much nervousness as I did when I first created mine. So let's get started on our checklist. So there's going to be kind of 4 pieces to it. I'll give you the overview, and then we'll dive deeper. So the first thing to think about, we're going to be thinking about the result of your program. So like the overall result, what matters most about the systems you're going to create. We'll talk about, so that's that first part, like the overall kind of big picture view. Then we'll kind of dive deeper into onboarding, client experience, and then the end of the program or retention. Okay, so you ready? I have a number of questions for you, but again, there's a workbook that you can follow along that will make this a lot easier. So the first question to ask yourself is, what is the result of the program that you're creating? Now, your result, of course, is going to probably change over time as you continue to build out your program. You get to know the people that you're serving and that sort of thing. But whether or not you're just starting, thinking about the result that you provide for your one-on-ones or the result you already have in your group program, it's good to have that in mind when you think about the systems you want to create. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is to decide what matters most about the systems that you will be setting up. So what matters most about the systems that you're going to set up? This is huge, because this is what's going to prevent a lot of the overwhelm that can get into, how am I going to set up this group program? How am I going to run it in a more streamlined way? When you can think about what matters most about this, it gives you kind of a lens to make decisions from as you go. So, for example, how do you want your clients to feel? What parts of your one-on-one would you like to make possible for a group program? Could be another question to think about. So for me, for example, I want my clients to feel supported. I want my clients to feel optimistic that they're going to get the results, and I want them to feel independent, like that they can get the results and they can get the support they need, and they don't need to have their hands held. Like there are resources available for them that they can move along in their journey or towards the result that they want. So for me, what matters most about the systems that I'm creating is that it allows for those things to happen, so that my people feel supported, so that people aren't falling through the cracks. So I have a way to catch up with people and know where they're at, like know where they're at along the path that they're on, that I know that I can follow up with people if they kind of fall off. Like I can think of a few clients right now that I know haven't attended calls in a while. So I've got a way to follow up with them so that they feel optimistic, that they know that they can achieve the result that they want to create. And again, that they feel independent. So number 1, what is the result of your program? And number 2 is what matters most about the systems that you're going to set up. From there, and I'll take a quick drink. From there is to think about onboarding. So once your people have decided they're in, you've got them ready to join your program, we're thinking about the onboarding experience. So the first thing to think about, and I'm going to share, this is when our checklist is going to start. I'll share some ideas to think about for your onboarding process. Is the first thing to think about is what matters most about the onboarding process. Again, it's to have that filter of what are your priorities for your onboarding experience? So for me, for my onboarding experience, is that my clients feel good about their purchase. So that avoids that, like that buyer's remorse feeling, and that they know their next steps to move forward in the program, because this is when they have like that excitement that they just bought, and I want to kind of continue on with that momentum. So for you, it might be that they know their next steps. It might be that they feel good about themselves. It might be that they feel encouraged. Like what matters most to you about your onboarding experience? For me, it's that they feel good about their purchase and they really know what their next steps are. So in order to do that, here's a checklist that I've created, but you might create a slightly different one based on what matters most to you for your onboarding experience. So for me, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that I'm going to give you for your onboarding. So the first is to think about your thank you page. I did not think about this for a very long time. I had an automatic thank you page, but to think about your thank you page after they sign up, to have some sort of thank you page that's going to confirm that they made the right decision, some sort of welcoming thank you page. The next thing is to have your automatic email and a first onboarding kind of page if you do have a portal set up. Now, again, when I first started my program, I did not have a portal. This was just through email. But in those two things, you want to have your next steps and what they need to do from here. So some of the things that might include would be like your login info, Facebook group links or community links if you have a community with your group calls, how to join calls, how to book their one-on-one if you have a one-on-one, how to succeed in the program, and so forth. So next steps, I put that in an email and I put that in the portal, like the welcome kind of page. I also have another thing that you might want to include in as a checklist is to have a survey of why they joined and their goals for the program. And that's going to help you kind of craft your lessons or your workshops from the goals that they have shared with you, and maybe some of the challenges they have too. From there, you're going to have an automation to connect them to weekly emails. So it might be a tag or an automated system. If you don't use Kajabi, for example, you might need to create that if you use something like ConvertKit. And then you might also want to have a client support email template. So again, all of these things are to help my clients feel good about their purchase and to know their next steps. So I'm going to reiterate. You would have the systems that I recommend for onboarding are a thank you page, next steps in your welcome page and in your email, which would include login info in the email, Facebook group links, how to call, etc. You want to have an automatic email system set up so that they get an automated email with all of that information. You want an automation to connect them to the weekly emails, and I would recommend having a survey and a client support email template. So again, this is in the workbook. So that is for your onboarding. Next, you want to think about, so they're in the program, they're in the group, and they're starting to move forward. The next thing we want to think about is the client experience. So of course, I'm going to ask you what matters most for you about the client experience. And this is going to depend upon what the result is, what you offer your clients. But for me, the general idea for what matters most about the client experience for me is that they know what to do to be successful, that they feel supported, and that they get the results and that they get the momentum they need to get bigger results as they go through the program. So they know what to do to be successful, that they feel supported, that they know that they can get results and momentum, and also that I can prevent people slipping through the cracks so that I have ways to connect and see where people are at in my program. So here's the checklist for the client experience. The first is to have a weekly email template so that you can send out your weekly emails and you're not recreating it from scratch all the time. Group calls, to have your group coaching, of course. You probably want to have a system for your Zoom link to make that easier as well. You might want to have a portal as you go on if you've been doing this for a little while and you have a portal. So that's another part of your client experience. You want to have a system to share replays. That's another thing and part of the checklist. Another thing that I like to include, and this comes back to knowing where your clients are at, and I didn't do this at the beginning, is to have group call takeaways at the end of every call, because sometimes you'll do a group call, and when you're in a one-on-one call, you might tend to be able to get a sense of where people are at, but in a group, it's kind of hard. So I like to have at the end of every call, group call takeaways or action steps so I can see what they got out of my lesson. It's basically, in teaching, we call it formative assessment. It's checking in, having regular touch points to see where people are at and what they got out of it and where they might be missing, so you can create your next workshops based on that feedback. So you want to be getting regular feedback. So I call it group call takeaways at the end of a workshop. From there, you want to have systems to prevent people from slipping through the cracks. So have people who kind of fall off the bus, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use. I think of the people slipping through the cracks that aren't getting the results and need more support. Because when we think about in teaching, we talk about like the percentages of how much intervention people need. We think 70% are going to just respond to the regular intervention, the regular instruction that we're going to give in our group calls. And then there's going to be 20 to 30% who might need a little bit more support and might need more personalized or individualized attention. So those are the people who might be falling through the cracks or might need more help from you. So having ways to support those people too. So some of the ways that I help prevent people from falling through the cracks is having weekly checkpoints. So that could look like a Facebook group, having little check-in posts that you have scheduled. That could be a system. But the main one is having a weekly survey. And this goes for like the 70% of people in your program, but also the ones who might need more support, to that 30%, is to have a weekly survey and see how people are going. And you can you can make this as complex or as simple as you want. It can be a simple Google form that you send out every week. Or if you have a larger program, it might be something a little bit more automated that kind of responds as people answer with different kind of possible questions. So it depends where you're at and how big your program are, but having some sort of weekly survey could be a really great system to follow up and see where people are at. Again, I said the Facebook group with weekly checkpoints, and then how you're going to support them if they fall off. So if they are not getting the results you need. So you need to have a system to follow up with them as well. So again, I'm going to recap for the client experience. You're going to do what matters most. And then the checklist that I included here are a weekly email template, having your group calls, having a portal, if you have a portal, if you want to include that, having group call takeaways, having a system to share your replays, having a system to prevent them from falling through the cracks. So a weekly checkpoint survey system. You might want to have weekly check-ins in your Facebook group, and then a system to support them if they fall off. So how is that? Is that going to be like a one-on-one call? Is that going to be an email? What are you going to do to help them if they need more support? So the last piece of this training is to think about the end of your program and what systems you might need for that piece of your program. So again, we're going to think about what matters most. Is it that you want to have a great testimonial? Is it that you want people to have great results? Is it that you want them to, is it program retention? Do you want them to continue working with you? What matters most about that is going to dictate the systems that you're going to choose for this piece of your program. So for me, the main thing that I care about at the end of the program is that my people have gotten results and they feel really good about their program, and that they can communicate that with me as well, so I can see where they're at. I also offer a retention option for people who need to go further with me, but I want to basically make sure that I'm continuing the process and that they feel supported, and I can offer them what they need, whether they're ending with me and they got what they needed or if they want to continue working with me. So the three things that I include for the end of program is to have a system for if you do a one-on-one call, having a system so that you regularly ask people to come to that retention call, if that's what you're offering, to have a follow-up survey and maybe a testimonial system too, so that you are actually getting testimonials for your program. And then if you have any final details, like for me in teaching, I have a completion certificate that they can use for funding purposes. So any kind of end of program final details that they might need, you would include that in your final system. So I'm going to recap. And again, this is in the workbook. You can follow along. I'm going to recap this checklist and these questions so you can have an idea of what you need to run your group program and to be able to scale it too. So on the back end. So first thing you're going to think about is the result. What's the result of your program? And what are the systems you need in place to actually get to that result in a group format? Next thing to think about is what matters most about the systems that you're going to set up. Maybe it's ease. That's another one I didn't include. Maybe that it just needs to be really, really easy and simple for you. You can decide. It doesn't have to be complex. The next thing is onboarding. So looking at what matters most to you about your onboarding, having maybe a thank you page when people sign up, having an email and a welcome page with their next steps so they know where to go from here. You want to have an automation that connects them to that welcome email and also to the weekly emails that you might be sending out if they're dripped or if they're something that you're creating every week. And then you want to have maybe a client support email template. And finally, a survey of why they joined and what their goals are, their obstacles and that sort of thing. The next thing you need is to think about the client experience. Again, what matters most about that. You might want to have a weekly email template, group coaching calls with replays, a way to share their takeaways at the end. You want to have ways to prevent them from slipping through the cracks. So that might be weekly checkpoints through a Facebook group and a survey, and a system to support them if they do fall off. Like, how are you going to touch base with them? And then the last piece is to think about, again, what matters most about the end of your program or your retention plan. You might need a system to invite them to an end of program call if you're offering a one-on-one in your program. You were going to need a follow-up survey and testimonial system, and you need to have a system to provide any final details like certificates and so forth, if that is what you offer in your program. So I trust that you found this useful. I hope you found some different takeaways or different ideas that you could use in your own program. And again, if you would like help with this, if you like these ideas and you'd like to create your own kind of personalized system for your own group coaching program that doesn't feel overwhelming, please do not hesitate to send me a DM. I would love to hear from you and see how I can support you in creating this for your own program.